This fellow got a CP3219A letter from the IRS proposing that he owes over $16,000 for tax year 2023. What's going on here? First of all, what is a CP3219A letter? Well, a CP3219A, it's a statutory notice of deficiency. It's in other words, a 90-day letter. Why is it called a 90-day letter? Because you have 90 days to petition the tax court if you want to preserve your tax court rights to resolve this matter there as kind of the last bastion of appeal, of course, unless you appeal to the appeals court, and I guess theoretically the Supreme Court, if it chooses to hear it. But that's why it's called 9-day letter. It's notice of deficiency, statutory notice of deficiency. And the CP3219A notice of deficiency is typically the notice of deficiency the IRS sends when it has previously sent you a CP2000 notice. A CP2000 notice is a notice the IRS sends you when it looks at your tax return, looks at other tax documents that the IRS received for income, such as 1099s, W-2s, K-1s, things like that, and says, we don't think you reported all this income that we received information on your tax return, right? And if you don't respond to that CP2000, or if you do respond and it slips through the cracks, which, believe it or not, happens very often, I'll talk about that later in this video, then the IRS will then send you the 90-day letter, the statutory notice of deficiency, which is typically the CP3219A after CP2000. There's other kinds of CP3219s. There's like a CP3219N, which is the 90-day letter, the notice of deficiency, when the IRS has prepared an SFR, a substitute for return for you, if you didn't file a return for a given year, right? And the IRS is saying, hey, we're going to assess this, right? We're proposing you owe this unless you do something about this, okay? Anyway, I have covered the entire CP3219A notice in a separate video. I went part by part, page by page, right, going exactly what all this is in another video. And a link to that video you can find at the upper right-hand corner of your screen. So I'm not going to go through it piece by piece here because I've already done that in a previous video. But I am going to answer this chap's question. I'm assuming it's a chap. I don't know. I just wanted to say chap. I wanted to say fellow. Okay, so shoot me. Basically, the title, I'm looking into local tax attorneys because I'm just totally out of my depth here. We had signed forms and submitted documentation previously that we do not agree with the proposed changes to our 2023 taxes, but I guess I don't care. Oh, wait. They probably got a CP2000 and they probably responded to it. Okay, and it just fell through the cracks. When you respond to a CP2000 notice, you're responding to the IRS's AUR automated underreported department. It is atrocious. Okay, it is terrible. Things fall through the cracks more in that department, I believe, or at least in my experience, my firm's experience, than any other department at the IRS. Okay, offers and compromise, that may take a long time, right? Don't get me wrong, but it generally doesn't fall through the cracks, right? Reason for that is that the IRS actually, if it does fall through the cracks for 2 years, offer is accepted by default, okay? And I think I made a video about this like a couple years ago. How long does it take the IRS to respond to a CP2000 notice, if ever? I think I said who knows, right? Anyway, link to that video at the upper right-hand corner of the screen. Unfortunately, chap, fellow, it sounds like, you did the right thing. You responded to the CP2000 notice, but the IRS, maybe it got lost. I don't know. I have not seen an automated, an in-person AUR office. I don't know how they operate, but it seems pretty disorganized to me, okay? And this is why it's just so important to follow with them, right? Like when we get a CP2000 case here at Choice Tax Relief, we charge a lot of money, to respond to the CP2000 notice because, even if the issue is relatively, I don't want to scare anyone by the price, but I'm just saying, look, people are like, hey, this issue is actually very simple. I didn't report this 1099 on my tax return. Yeah, now I should have reported it, but now I have some expenses the IRS isn't considering. Isn't it just an easy fix? You'd think it would be, okay? But the problem is the tax return was submitted incorrectly. You signed that return under penalty of perjury, right? Now we need a whole response. And part of it is following up with the IRS to respond, following up with AUR to make sure our client's case doesn't fall through the cracks. And you have to be a power of attorney to do that, right? We can't just, have any staff do that. It has to be either myself or one of my other tax professionals, like a tax attorney or an EA, doing that. Okay, so it's a time-intensive thing to follow up, just to make sure it doesn't fall through the cracks. Not just saying it'll get done, super fast that way. But just to make sure bare minimum, it doesn't fall through the cracks. See what I'm saying? So that's what I think went on here, right? It seems like they did the right thing, but the IRS just dropped the ball. And they want to know, that it cooked, or can this kind of thing be resolved? Yes, it can be resolved. It can definitely be resolved. I paid them plan that year, believe me. Yeah, you got to. So if you want to preserve your tax court rights, you can file a tax court petition, right? Oftentimes, though, if this is actually just a simple thing, right? Like a simple matter of fact, like, for example, people get CP2000s because they sold some crypto. It was reported that the sales were reported to the IRS, but they didn't report the crypto on their tax return. So they, at least the IRS doesn't know their basis. And so they assume that what they sold the crypto for is their gain. 100% gain with no basis, right? If it's something like that and you have good records of the basis, then this can be resolved with the IRS by just faxing back the your response to this fax number here, okay? And what I want you to do is wait, let's say a month until after you faxed it, and then call this number here to make sure that they've received it and that your response has been received, basically. Okay, that's what I recommend that you do. If it still continues to be a black hole and you're not getting through to anybody here, and you're coming up on that 90-day, to protect your rights, right, in case the IRS just screws up, you probably want to file a tax court petition, right? Also, if obviously, and this is not legal advice, it's not tax advice, I'm not your tax professional, okay? But if you think, or you get counsel that thinks that there's any the IRS could push back on this, right? It's not just a simple, I didn't report my basis and here's all my basis in my crypto. But if there's something substantial here the IRS could push back on factually or legally, then you may want to file that tax court, petition. Most of the time, though, these CP3219A, just like the CP2000s, are just for simple things not reported on the return that can be usually remedied within the IRS itself. Okay. Folks, if you received a CP3219A or any other kind of 90-day letter, or really any scary notice from the IRS, you qualify for a free consultation with us here at Choice Tax Relief. Just give us a call, 866-8000-TAX, to schedule that free consultation, or you can use a link in the description below to book that free consultation. And let's see, what should I post here? We got, let's do my notices on the CP3219A, which is the notice this chap received. But let's put that in the upper left-hand corner, and my notice on the CP2000, which is the notice that kind of kicks off this whole CP3219A issue in the first place in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.